Alrighty. Zachariah's sixth vision. We're finishing that up, and then we'll jump into 7. And I brought the wrong paper for 8 today, so give me that next one. Alright, the last thing I think we did was 2B, and it was talking about the measurements of the scroll. And the measurements of the scroll were 30 feet by 15 feet, or 20 cubits by 10 cubits. If you bring up a diagram of the tabernacle in the wilderness, it was a long area for the Holy of Holies with dolphin skin around it so the glory of God could not pour out blind people. There was kind of like 3 sections in it, and the first section was this exact measurement. And then the Ark of the Covenant sat in the middle, and there was another little section there that was different measurement. And then there was the far end, I think, where they took the sin sacrifice on the altar. But that first section was these exact measurements in the Holy of Holies. And Don also said, I checked it out, that Solomon's porch and the Solomon's temple were those measurements. And so that's true too. So they were significant. They were pointing toward the Messiah. They had a significance of his authority. And the scroll was for a specific purpose. And that brings us down to 3. Where they say, well, we did 3. Okay, B, what's the explanation? Remember, the scroll was unfurled. It was open for everybody to see. So it was a message for the whole world. If you went into a Jewish temple in Jesus' time, they would only open the scrolls during the worship service. And they would read from Isaiah, the scroll of Isaiah, the scroll of whatever. And it was for the congregation. This scroll is open for the whole world. This is a message for everybody in the world. Wow. So, what was the explanation? What was God trying to say? Anybody do it?
Is it what the, hold on, the scroll was God's word?
It was
pronounced?
verse 3a.
Okay, 3:1. The Lord will send it out, and it will enter the house and remain. That's what I have, 3a. What was the judgment? What was the judgment?
Yeah.
Okay. I put, the Lord will send it out, and it will enter the house and remain there.
Okay.
Thieves.
Yeah.
Every thief expelled. Every thief expelled.
Right. Every thief will be exposed and banished. And everyone who swears by the name of God will be exposed and banished. At 3b. Right. So there's consequences. There's consequences for our sin.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one.
Yeah. There's consequences
down.
for our sin. What about the Christian? Can we lose our salvation? Can we be kicked out of the chosen few?
No.
No.
But there are still consequences. What are the consequences for me if I sin? I damage my relationship with God. My prayers are not going to get through the way they should. God is going to deal with me until his child comes back to obedience. And I don't know, you guys that were here yesterday, kids were amazing. All the kids were amazing. They were responsive. Of course, when you're throwing candy at them, it kind of goes a little bit. But they were responsive, they were laughing, they were joking around, they were answering the questions, they were asking questions. I mean, there was like 10 minutes there, we were answering questions that the kids were asking. They weren't just sitting there like a bunch of, and they were, every one of them, I did not see one act of disobedience the whole day. I'm not sure how it works anymore in the public school, but I don't think it's quite that good. So, he will deal with us because obedience is the best thing for me. I'm not helping God any by being obedient. It gives him pleasure. He enjoys my worship. He enjoys well, he doesn't enjoy my singing, but he enjoys your singing. He enjoys the work that I do, if I do it with the right attitude, and he rewards me. He rewards me for it. But the bottom line is, if I do it with a bad attitude, I lose my witness, I lose my integrity as a Christian, I lose my testimony, and I lose a relationship with God. I just start building this wall. And the more obedient I become, the thicker the wall gets, and it just gets thicker and thicker until, and then God's obedience, God's discipline becomes more intense because he's going to bring me back. God doesn't lose his sheep. If he starts out with 100, he ends up with 100. And if I'm one of those stuck in the briars, he's going to follow me all the way to the briar patch. And then when I repent, he's going to break me loose from it. At least that is the way it has worked in my life for 61 years. And there have been those moments when I cannot say that I was obedient. But God was always obedient to stick with me until I came to my senses. And it was always for my best. It was always for what was best for me. Okay, so God's punishment is not out of anger for his children. God's punishment is out of concern for his children. And hopefully, that's why we discipline our children. Never do it in anger. Calm down. Explain to them why they're about to get a whipping, and then make the whipping memorable. I read a book one time about raising children, and there was a grandpa sitting there watching his daughter discipline his grandchildren. And he got pretty detailed what the guy did. And she would say, "No, quit that. No, quit. I said quit that. Why are you still doing that?" And she just going on and the kid was still. And so he looked at her and said, it's time to discipline that child. And she picked him up and patted him on the butt. And he said, a spanking should be memorable. So we were in Bible study in Holland one night with a lady there named, we'll call her Karen. Okay, there's a lady named Karen. And her son was out fishing behind the house where we were having the Bible study. And so we were talking about disciplining children. And she said, well, I spank my kids. And they know it when I spank them. Well, I knew Karen, she had a heart of gold and she worshiped her kids. And I just kind of doubted that. I said, well, usually in order for it to be done right, I have to do it because women are kind of soft-hearted. No. Well, her boy walks in. And I said, well, is this your boy? I said, well, ask him. So she said, I spank you, don't I? He said, oh yeah. And it's memorable, right? He said, oh yeah, Mom, it's memorable. And she looked at me and said, well, maybe I better let my husband. I don't like to be the bad guy, but like it or not, I'm the head of the house according to the Bible. And it's a joint effort now. And in our day and age, things have changed a lot, both socially and spiritually since the old days. But the bottom line is, I was the one that had to do it because my wife just couldn't do it. And made me the bad guy, but it had to be done. Bible clearly says, if you don't discipline your children, if you spare the rod, you hate your child. It doesn't say you're disrespecting your child. It doesn't say ignoring your child. It says you hate your child. So, maybe the only spanking Paisley will ever get will be by you, but it's necessary.
I can't. I can't.
Enough said, right? Okay, Jordan, fess
Yeah,
up.
it's up to you, Abby. I think that's up to her daddy. We'll leave it there.
Well, it's really her father's responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. They're gonna be banished. Now, back in this day and time, what did it mean to be banished?
To be kicked out of the town. Or if it was the church, the Jewish, it's kicked out of the Jewish religion.
You couldn't be within the walls of the temple. You couldn't worship in the temple. And so nobody would do business with you either. Okay? Now, it's not the Muslim thing with the right hand and the left hand thing. But if you were banished for whatever reason, you were, what do the
Shunned.
Amish call it?
Shunned.
Shunned. Amish call it shunned. And you're shunned until you straighten up and start acting the way you're supposed to act. And then you get to come back in. Well, back then, in Moses in the wilderness, if you were banished from the camp, you were out there in the wilderness with the wolves. And you didn't come back into camp until you fulfilled the 7 days of purification or whatever was necessary for what you've been caught doing. And in Achan's case, him and his whole family were killed and his tent was burned with the battle of Ai and all that. And it was a very strict discipline thing. I had a friend named BJ, who he's an Indian in Oklahoma, Kickapoo Indian camp, a good Christian boy. And he would always be at the summer camps that Janice and I and the kids went to help run the summer camp for the Kickapoo Indian Reservation. Went out there 19 years. Well, he went into the Army and or the Air Force. He went into the Air Force, and his job was to be in Iraq and to every 6 months the AWAC airplane had to be completely revitalized. It was so intense, the electronic field in the AWAC airplane was so intense that it actually broke down the metal in the wires. And after 6 months, it wasn't reliable anymore. And every wire had to be taken out, and every plug had to be replaced, and so the radar would be accurate, and so that the sending equipment, whatever's in it, then would work properly. Okay. So he said he was over there, and I said, well, how is it over there? He said, well, the first thing they tell you is don't steal anything. I said, okay. He said, well, it's really tempting if you're from America and you go over there, because you walk into these bazaars, you walk into these marketplaces, and they've got gold and silver just laying on the tables. And when they go home at night, and the windows have bars on them, but they don't have glass in them because it's too hot in that building if you don't have good ventilation. He said, so when they go home at night, they just throw a blanket over their table, and they go home, come back the next morning, do business. And the gold and silver just lays there. I said, doesn't it ever get stolen? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, well, because if you get caught stolen, they cut off your right hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the penalty for being a thief in Iraq and Iran. They can chop off your right hand. Well, in that culture, you have to do business with your right hand because your left hand's used for something else.
Yep.
They don't have toilet paper over there. Your left hand is the hand that is used to.
That checks out.
Right? So, you cannot hand anybody money with your left hand in those countries. It is a severe insult. And you could get beat to death on the spot. And nobody would prosecute. You have to do business with your right hand. Well, basically, if they cut off your right hand, you're about to starve to death. You can't buy anything, you can't touch anything in a market with your left hand. It is a very strict rule. I said, well, how many people did you see walking around Iraq with their right hand amputated? He said, didn't see one. See, they only have to cut off one or two and everybody gets the message and starts behaving. But when your legal system falls apart and there's no consequences for your sin, all you're inviting is more sin. Well, in this culture and in Jerusalem at this time, or in Israel at this time, to be banished had severe consequences. And you weren't going to be there to protect your property, you weren't going to be there to protect your kids and your children. You were going to be kicked out, and you were going to be kicked out until you straightened up. So we kind of don't have a handle on what was really going on. But they had one of the penalty for not abortion, but adultery with death. They stoned you to death. And they were supposed to stone both the man and the woman. Both of them were supposed to be stoned. In Jesus' time, they were perfectly happy with stoning the women, but they usually didn't do anything to the man. So, the divorce rate in Israel is something under 2%. The divorce rate in America is over 70%. And those of us that have been married 55, about to be 56 years, we're pretty rare. Now that doesn't mean that both people in the divorce are wrong. Sometimes, the Bible says there are good reasons for divorce: child abuse, cheating on your wife, cheating on your husband. Those are legitimate reasons to be divorced. But 70%, most people are getting divorced today because it's inconvenient to be married. Right. So there's going to be, and you're going to be banished, and there's going to be consequences. When the Hebrew sees that word banished, it sends chills down his spine. It means something severe. And they're a lot more hesitant to break the law. Okay, C. The frightening declaration of God. What's God's declaration? In verse 4a and 4b.
His consequences? I said it earlier because I messed up. So the Lord will send,
There you go.
yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll send out and enter the house and remain there. Basically, he will curse the house, and then he'll destroy it completely, both in its timbers and its stones.
Okay. God's curse will pursue the guilty. And let's get this very, very clear. If I'm guilty, I am not going to get away with it with God. I might get away with it in the court. I might get away with it with people who don't know me very well, and I can put on a show. But if I'm dealing with God, guilty's guilty, and I know He knows. Okay? So, God's curse will pursue the guilty into their houses and places of refuge. And for B, God's curse will destroy the guilty and even consume their own homes. It will be a total curse. And AI is Achan and the Battle of Ai is an extremely good example of how God sees our sinfulness. Now we have a different relationship with Him now. Back in Achan's day, God was the judge and He wasn't the father of humanity. But today, after Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins, He's our Father. Either our Father or our Judge. And so the relationship has changed some. But when we're dealing with God, we're not going to fool anybody. We're not going to pull the wool over His eyes, and we're not going to get away with it. His motives are for our benefit. His motives are so we can prosper and so that we can have peace. But the bottom line is, if we choose to be disobedient and arrogant about it, we're going to have to deal with Him as a disciplinarian. And He has all the cards when it comes to that. We're not going to bargain with Him. He loves His children. He wants the best for His children. And He's gonna bring it about, kicking and screaming if that's the way we choose to be. It can be easy or it can be hard, and it's all up to me. So, if you're in rebellion, you won't talk to me about it. Straighten up. Okay, we got folks here. And we'll do 7 next week, and then I'll bring you 8. Thanks for all the help yesterday.